Hey, I'm Thomas Guinan, lead developer at the Mixed Games.
So Thomas, you're showing Rugrats Adventures in Gameland. How did this game come about?
Yeah, so it basically started, Justin Woodward, my partner, and I, we originally developed Jay and Silent Bob Mall Brawl, released it through Limited Run Games, and that did pretty well. It was another NES game, just like this is, and yeah, it did well, so we decided to go into business together and look for other retro IPs that would fit well with the whole retro video game thing.
How did you land on Rugrats?
It just kind of happened. The opportunity was there, and we thought it would be a great fit for a retro game.
So I watched some gameplay here at the Mix. I'm seeing a mix of like a lot of Disney Afternoon stuff, classic Capcom games. Talk about some of the inspirations when you were making this.
Basically any good NES platform we tried to take a little bit of DNA from. So there's a lot of kind of like Super Mario 2, the Disney games, Mega Man, Bonk's Adventure, Little Samson.
All bangers.
Oh yeah, exactly. All that stuff. And just take all that, mash it together, and then you just give a little bit of spice to some of the levels. So we kind of got a Castlevania themed level. You got a level that's might be a little more Kirby style. You know, just throwing things here and there. Just trying to take all the nostalgia from the NES era and cram it into this one game.
No. As a game dev, is it hard with you have so many advances in technology now, so many different things you can do in Unity and Unreal? Is it hard to keep yourself kind of in check to not use all these like tools and particles and effects when you're trying to recreate something that's like from the NES era?
I wouldn't say it's necessarily hard because the option just really isn't there for you. You kind of have a cap, and it's more about like, okay, what can we fit in before we hit this cap and we can't put anything else? And then it's just about getting creative.
The NES games were notorious for the slowdown. Do you guys have that in your game as well, the mimic slowdown when there's too many things on screen?
I mean, it might happen now that I tried to avoid it as much as possible, but I mean, it's got two-player co-op, so you get two-player co-op on an NES game. It's kind of unavoidable. We are going to be doing it though on modern consoles as well, and that it won't be in there in the modern versions. It's a little more cleaned up. So
that's right. You're going to have like an alternate version where you have the 8-bit classic version, and you're going to have like this beautiful remastered hand-drawn animation version as well.
Yeah, so we're working with a studio called Angry Metal. They're doing the artwork for the HD mode. It's basically a toggle, so the game is exactly the same as the 8-bit game, but you can just toggle in this like beautiful hand-drawn, it looks just like the old cartoon graphics. It's a really cool option. The music is all being redone, so it's the same music, plays the same tempo, and you can hot swap at any point, switch between sort of the modern and classic modes.
Is it hard replicating the feel of a classic 8-bit game in a modern game dev age?
I don't know. It's kind of an interesting question, really, because it's when you're developing on the old hardware, it kind of happens almost by default. Really something though it's interesting is taking the design mentality of a modern game and applying that towards an older console. Because there's a lot of things kind of like how physics work and just sort of quality of life things that weren't in those old games that you kind of take for granted. So trying to bring some of those features into an old game is that's kind of more the mindset that I take with it.
You mentioned before that you're going to be doing a limited run games run for a real NES cartridge.
Yeah, NES cartridge. You basically said it. It's and that's going to be happening early next year. So
how does that feel as a game dev? Because like we live in a digital age where people can download games easily accessible, which is great, but having your work be physical, existing in physical space is a big deal.
Oh yeah, there's something that's just incredibly cool, just having that tangible, that tangible cartridge or tangible disc or whatever in your hand with something that you created on it. There's just that feeling it's really cool.
How do you have time to make a game and do because that's manufacturing, that's product design? Are you involved in that at all? You just focus on the game design aspect?
I'd say mostly I do the game design, but I am involved a little bit on the publishing side of things too. So I wear a few different hats.
What is it like seeing that? Because it's a whole other industry, manufacturing, distribution, and creating a physical product rather than just making a game as a code and then putting it into a store. What's the biggest misconception in that industry?
I think a lot of people, you really don't know how much work goes behind it. Because even if you were to take something even a small project, there's a lot more people than you realize that are behind there. Just doing things especially in dealing, say, with licensed property, you got to talk, you got to have meetings, you got to talk with various people, you have to, and then with supply chains and that stuff with manufacturing, there is a lot that goes on, and it's just a really interesting thing.
What was the biggest lesson you learned from Mall Brawl that you brought with you in Adventures in Gameland?
Just taking some of those system limitations and moving them. If I want to go into some more tech speak about it, with Mall Brawl was developed using the MMC1 mapper, And I really, going back, wish I had used MMC3, which is what we used for Rugrats, because it just opened up so many more options. And I think it shows. As far as NES games go, I feel it's really polished. It feels really nice.
Now, this game sells like hotcakes on digital, which it should because it looks amazing and it does well. Will we see more retro, like 90s cartoons make a comeback?
Oh, yeah, I can pretty much guarantee it. Yeah.
If you could pick one IP right now that you were allowed to make a game with, what would that be and why?
I mean, personally, if I could pick one that, that I can honestly say we're not connected to or something, I'd love to do a Transformers 8-bit game. They did have a Japanese Transformers one, and it sucked. I would love to take that idea and make it good, like a good Transformers 8-bit Metroidvania kind of thing. I think that would be amazing.
People are dying for a Transformers game. Activision misplaced a lot of their old games recently.
There's so many of those retro IPs that just didn't get, even something like, you have Master of the Universe or Thundercats or so many things from
wow,
that
you
era.
just keep naming them off, man.
Exactly. They Mask. You know what I mean? You get super, all that stuff. They're begging for something. It's not there.
Transformers says no, just you can always go to GoBots. I think Hasbro owns GoBots.
Now they do. So, although, maybe it's an easier sell.
So I have to you creaked the door open a little bit. You said that stuff that you're not in talks with now. Are you in talks to do other retro titles that you can't talk about right now?
I'm just going to not confirm or deny that. Yeah. So we don't have a hard date yet, but there's going to be NES and just all the modern consoles and Steam. It's going to be everywhere. Yeah.
Where can they go to find out more information about your game?
Go to themixedgames.com and you can check out some info there.